Imagine this: one single banker, not the government, saved America from total financial collapse. This isn't a movie plot. It happened. The year is 1907. New York City. The air is electric with optimism. The world's biggest banks, colossal towers of stone and steel, loom over Wall Street. Money is flowing like a river, the stock market is roaring, and America believes it's an unstoppable industrial empire. But beneath this glittering surface, the entire financial system is as fragile as glass. All it would take is one small shock to shatter everything. That shock arrived in October. It started with something almost invisible: a failed gamble by two speculators trying to corner the market on a small mining firm, the United Copper Company. Their plan blew up in their faces. The stock crashed, and suddenly, like a tremor before an earthquake, the entire financial world began to panic. Why? Because those speculators had borrowed enormous sums of money from New York's banks and trust companies. When their scheme failed, the lenders were left holding empty bags. The contagion of fear spread like wildfire. Rumors flew through the streets, whispered from person to person: the banks are out of money. The trust companies are collapsing. Get your savings out now, before it's too late. Within hours, chaos erupted. Massive crowds mobbed the entrances to banks, their faces etched with desperation. People were screaming, shoving, demanding their life savings. But no bank, no matter how large, keeps all its deposits in cash. There was simply not enough money to give everyone. The American financial system, which had no Federal Reserve, no government safety net, was teetering on the absolute brink of annihilation. The entire country, its economy, its future, was about to fall off a cliff. And in that moment of collective terror, the nation turned its eyes to one man. His name was John Pierpont Morgan, J.P. Morgan, a titan of industry, a financial giant whose personal wealth dwarfed that of entire states. He was a man feared by politicians and practically worshipped on Wall Street. But here's the crucial part. He was not a government official. He held no elected office. He was a private citizen, a banker with immense, unprecedented power. As the U.S. government stood frozen, paralyzed with confusion and helplessness, J.P. Morgan stepped into the void. He didn't do it for glory or public acclaim. He wasn't ordered to by the president. He acted because he, more than anyone, understood one terrifying, simple truth. If he didn't do something, America would fall. And if America fell, everything he had built would fall with it. The first domino to fall was the Knickerbocker Trust Company, one of the largest and most respected financial institutions in the country. Its collapse wasn't a sudden event. It was like watching a giant die in slow motion. The news sent shockwaves of pure panic through the city. People flooded the streets, their fear turning to anger. The police were overwhelmed, unable to control the desperate crowds. Then, one by one, other banks began to shut their doors, posting signs that read "Closed" to the faces of horrified depositors. The heart of the American economy, the New York Stock Exchange, sent out a desperate plea. It needed $25 million in cash, immediately, an astronomical sum at the time. More, it would be forced to close its doors forever. The ripple effects were immediate and catastrophic. Factories across the nation prepared to shut down. Railroads, the arteries of the country, were about to grind to a halt. Millions of ordinary Americans faced the prospect of unemployment and destitution. The President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, couldn't fix it. Congress couldn't fix it. The Treasury Department was at a loss. In this moment of national paralysis, every eye, every desperate hope, turned to a single address: J.P. Morgan's private library on Madison Avenue. What happened next is the stuff of legend. Imagine the scene. Inside Morgan's magnificent library, a dark, cathedral-like room filled with priceless, leather-bound books and Renaissance art. America's most powerful bankers gathered. These were the heads of the biggest banks, the railroad tycoons, the insurance magnates. These were men who, on any other day, held the world in their hands. But on this night, they were terrified. They watched as the country sank, as the financial system they commanded died before their very eyes. No one wanted to take the risk. No one wanted to take responsibility. Then, the aging J.P. Morgan, his face grim, rose slowly from his chair. His voice cut through the tension. "Gentlemen," he declared, "we must act." But some of the bankers hesitated. They refused to contribute the funds needed to rescue the system, fearing for their own institutions. In that critical moment, Morgan, a man used to getting his way, did something astonishing. He walked calmly to the massive, ornate doors of his library, and ordered his staff to lock them from the outside. "No one leaves," he decreed, "until we have a solution. No one leaves until we save the country." They were trapped. For hours, the most powerful men in America were Morgan's prisoners. Voices were raised. Arguments thundered through the hallowed room. Fortunes hung in the balance. But, through it all, Morgan remained a pillar of calm, calculating, analyzing, negotiating, and pushing. He leveraged not just his money, but his immense personal authority. By dawn, exhausted and defeated, they had all agreed. Morgan had forced them into a pact. Together, as a private consortium, they would pool millions of dollars to stabilize the financial system. It was the closest thing to a private army saving a nation, armed with nothing but money and sheer force of will. With the agreement secured, Morgan launched his rescue plan like a military commander deploying his troops. Step 1. Save the stock market. He immediately funneled millions in emergency funds to the New York Stock Exchange, keeping its doors open and preventing a complete market meltdown. Step 2. Save the trust companies. He and his team worked around the clock, personally examining the books of struggling institutions, performing a brutal financial triage. He decided which were salvageable and which had to be left to fail, channeling funds to those that could be saved. Step 3. Save the railroads and the city. With two major railroads on the verge of collapse, and New York City itself about to default on its debts, Morgan forced the healthy banks to provide the necessary loans to keep the trains running and the city solvent. Step 4, and perhaps the most important, calm the public. He made a powerful public announcement, letting the world know that his vast personal fortune, and that of his allies, stood behind the American financial system. The message was clear. If J.P. Morgan believed the system was safe, then it was safe. The effect was almost immediate. The crowds began to thin. The panic started to slow. Banks cautiously reopened. The markets stabilized. The crisis wasn't over, but the bleeding had stopped, and slowly, America began to breathe again. When the dust settled, the reality was stark and undeniable. The government did not save America. The Treasury did not save America. Congress did not save America. One man, a private citizen operating out of his personal library, had saved the entire system through negotiation, intimidation, and an unbreakable will. But this incredible victory raised a darker, more troubling question. Should any single individual have that much power? Because if one man could save America, it stood to reason that one man could also destroy it. The panic of 1907 was a brutal wake-up call. It exposed the terrifying truth that America's modern industrial economy had no adult supervision. There was no central bank to manage the money supply, no powerful regulator to oversee the banks, no emergency lender to step in during a crisis. There was nothing, so, in 1913, 6 years after Morgan's dramatic intervention, the U.S. Congress created the Federal Reserve System. Its primary mission was to ensure that a crisis like 1907 could never happen again. It was designed to stabilize the banking system, manage the nation's currency, and act as the ultimate lender of last resort in times of panic. It marked the end of an era where a private banker could single-handedly rescue or hold hostage an entire nation. But the legend lived on. The story of the man who locked the most powerful bankers in a room and saved America. In 1907, America learned a harsh truth. When systems fail, leadership doesn't always come from titles or official positions. It comes from those who are willing to take responsibility. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as incredible as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that shaped our world. See you next time.